The chandelier light caught the crystal wine glass like a warning. Kang Jae-won had arrived 40 minutes early to the private restaurant. Old survival instinct from years ruling Seoul's underworld. Early meant alive. Late meant dead. The elegant dining hall should have been empty. It wasn't. Through the gap between marble pillars, he saw her. Seo Yura, his fiancée, standing beside their reserved table in cream silk. She was laughing with a man Jae-won didn't recognize, but whose calculating posture he knew all too well. Jae-won stepped forward, jaw set. "Sir, please." A hand brushed his sleeve, not grabbing, just stopping him. He turned sharply. A black waitress stood close, her eyes wide with certainty, not fear. "Don't sit yet," she whispered, lips barely moving. "Because if you drink what she ordered, you won't leave here the same man." Jae-won had survived street wars, coups, and 100 decorated betrayals. But something in this woman's voice made him do what powerful men rarely do. He listened. And what Amara was about to reveal would prove that the most dangerous poison isn't always mixed in the dark. Sometimes it's served with a smile at a proposal dinner. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to your channel name, where love, danger, and destiny collide in the most unexpected ways. Before we dive into tonight's heart-stopping tale, I want to thank each of you for being here. This story, about a mafia boss, a waitress with everything to lose, and a fiancé with murder in her heart, is one you'll want to watch until the very end. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you'd never expect to notice. Kang Jae-won, feared Korean mafia boss, survivor of countless assassination attempts, master of reading people, had learned to arrive early to everything. In his world, 40 minutes could mean the difference between breathing and bleeding. Tonight, those 40 minutes revealed a truth he never saw coming. The exclusive restaurant glowed with chandelier light, intimate and perfect for the proposal rehearsal dinner he'd planned with his fiancée, Seo Yura. Except Yura wasn't alone. She stood with a stranger, laughing in a way that made Jae-won's instincts scream. His hand moved toward his weapon. "Sir!" The voice came from nowhere. A black waitress materialized beside him, her touch featherlight on his sleeve, but her message iron-heavy. "Don't sit yet. Don't drink what she ordered." Her name was Amara. She had every reason to stay silent, to protect her job, her safety, her immigration status, but she didn't. "If you drink it," she whispered, "you won't leave here the same man." In that moment, one of Seoul's most dangerous men made a choice that would change everything. He trusted a stranger who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Because sometimes, salvation doesn't come from your inner circle. Sometimes, it comes from the person serving your wine. Welcome back, beautiful souls. Tonight's story is about loyalty found in unexpected places, betrayal hiding behind beautiful faces, and the courage it takes to whisper the truth when everyone expects you to stay silent. Stay with me. This one's going to touch your soul. Let me ask you something. If you arrived early to your engagement dinner and saw your fiancé with another man, what would you do? For Kang Jae-won, notorious Korean mafia boss, the answer should have been simple. He'd handled betrayals before, swiftly, decisively, and without mercy. But this night was different. The private restaurant sparkled with elegance, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, soft music. The perfect setting for love. Except when Jae-won walked through those tall wooden doors 40 minutes before his fiancée expected him, he found Seo Yura already there, with someone else. His instinct said, move. His training said, eliminate the threat. But then, "Sir, please, don't sit yet." A black waitress named Amara appeared beside him, risking everything to deliver one urgent message. "If you drink what she ordered, you won't leave here the same man." Now, Jaewon faced a choice: trust his rage, or trust a stranger with terrified eyes and a trembling hand holding a small glass vial. The vial his fiancée had given her to poison his wine. Family, welcome back to the channel where we bring you stories that'll have you on the edge of your seat, clutching your chest, and questioning everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell me, would you have trusted Amara? Because what happens next? You're not ready for it. Amara's hand trembled slightly as she guided Jaewon away from the dining hall. Not through the main entrance where Yura might see, but sideways, past a decorative divider and into a service corridor lined with mirrored glass. The snow-white tablecloths reflected perfectly outward. Those inside couldn't see in. "5 minutes ago," Amara whispered, her voice barely audible over the classical music drifting through the walls. "Your fiancé asked me to swap the wine pairing. Said the first bottle was too ordinary?" Jaewon's expression remained carved from stone. "And?" "She handed me this." Amara pulled a sealed vial from her uniform pocket, clear liquid, innocuous looking. "Told me to add it to your glass. Called it a supplement for your health." Through the mirrored glass, Yura laughed again. The sound sliced through the air like broken crystal. "And you didn't?" Jaewon asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "No?" Amara met his eyes, her own reflecting something between terror and defiance. "I pretended. Poured from a clean bottle instead and kept the vial." Jaewon studied her face. Years of ruling Seoul's underworld had taught him when to ignore people and when not to. This woman, this stranger in a waitress uniform, had just handed him evidence of murder conspiracy when staying silent would have been infinitely safer. "Why?" he asked simply. Amara swallowed hard. "Because I heard what she said to the man with her." "What did she say?" "That once you were out of the way, the wedding wouldn't be necessary anymore." Amara's accent, Nigerian, he registered distantly, grew thicker with emotion. "Just the money, just the access, just freedom." Silence pressed between them, heavy as the chandeliers overhead. Jaewon had survived street wars where allies became enemies overnight. He'd weathered internal coups disguised as loyalty. He'd walked through rooms full of men who smiled while reaching for knives. But this surgical, intimate betrayal cut differently. "Your name?" he asked. "Amara, sir." "Amara." He tested it, then nodded once. "I want you to keep serving as if nothing has changed. Can you do that?" Her eyes widened. "Sir?" "And I want you to listen," he continued, his voice taking on the command that had built an empire. "Every word they say, every whisper when they think no one's watching. Can you do that?" Amara straightened her spine. Whatever fear she'd shown before crystallized into something harder. "Yes." "Good." They stepped back into the dining hall separately. Amara first, professional and invisible, then Jaewon seconds later, adjusting his cufflinks as if he'd simply stepped out to take a call. Yura noticed him instantly. Her smile brightened like stage lights. Polished, perfect, practiced. "Jaewon, you're early." "So are you," he replied smoothly, crossing to her and pressing a kiss to her cheek. The cream silk of her dress felt expensive against his fingers. He'd bought it for her last month. The irony tasted like ash. The man beside her straightened, extending a hand. Corporate posture, designer suit, confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Park Min-seok. He introduced himself. Business associate, Yura added quickly, her hand fluttering to her collarbone, a tell Jaewon had never noticed before but would never forget now. He was just leaving. Jaewon shook Min-seok's hand, grip measured. I don't recall approving a business meeting tonight. Min-seok's smile thinned. Opportunities don't wait for schedules, Mr. Kang. No, Jaewon agreed softly. They don't. The tension lasted 3 seconds before Min-seok gathered his coat and left with promises to discuss details later. Jaewon watched him go, memorizing his gait, his watch, the way he touched Yura's shoulder in passing. Too familiar for a business associate. Dinner was served with choreographed precision. Amara placed the wine bottle before them, her movements fluid and professional. When she poured Jaewon's glass, their eyes met for half a second. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Clean, it said. This one's safe. Yura lifted her glass, crystal catching candlelight. To new beginnings, she toasted, her smile radiant. Jaewon raised his own glass, but didn't drink. Instead, he set it down gently. Before we toast, he said, voice even as a blade. Tell me something, Yura. How long have you known Park Min-seok? Her smile faltered, just a flicker. Why does that matter? Because, Jaewon continued, watching every micro-expression cross her beautiful face. You asked a waitress to poison me. The restaurant froze. Even the music seemed to stop. Yura laughed, sharp, defensive. You're being dramatic. You've been working too hard, darling. I have the vial, Amara said clearly, stepping forward from her position near the service station. Her voice didn't waver, despite the weight of the moment. And the kitchen has security cameras. The color drained from Yura's face like water from a broken glass. Jaewon stood slowly, buttoning his coat with deliberate calm. You chose the wrong place, the wrong time. His eyes held hers without mercy. And the wrong woman to underestimate. Security entered from both sides, men Jaewon had positioned before even walking into the restaurant, because old habits and survival instincts never truly died. Yura's composure shattered. You don't understand, she hissed, desperation replacing elegance. I was going to fix everything. The marriage, the business, your reputation. No, Jaewon said quietly. You were going to erase me. 2 hours later, when police had taken statements and Yura had been escorted out in handcuffs, still wearing her cream silk dress, Jaewon sat alone at the table. The wine stood untouched, evidence bags marked and sealed. Footsteps approached softly. Amara stood at a respectful distance, still in her uniform, uncertainty written across her features. You could have walked away, Jaewon said without looking up. Taken your shift pay, forgotten my face, gone home to your life. She shook her head slowly. Some things don't let you sleep if you ignore them. He looked at her then, really looked, past the uniform, past the role of waitress that made her invisible to people like Yura. He saw courage that most of his trained soldiers didn't possess, saw integrity that his own blood family had failed to show. Stay, he said. Amara blinked. Sir? Not as staff. Jaewon stood, pulling a business card from his inner pocket and offering it to her. As someone I can trust. I run many businesses, Amara. Legitimate ones that could use someone with your instincts. She took the card carefully, reading it in the dim restaurant light. Why? She asked, echoing his earlier question to her. Because, Jaewon said, the hint of something almost like a smile touching his features. You saved my life when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That's rare. That's valuable. He paused. That's the kind of loyalty I don't take for granted. Amara tucked the card into her pocket, right next to where the vial had been. I'll think about it. Good. Think carefully. He moved toward the exit, then stopped. And Amara? Thank you. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. Outside, Soul moved on, unaware that in an elegant restaurant over untouched wine and broken betrayals, 2 lives had just been irrevocably changed. One saved from poison, the other saved from invisibility. Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining me on this fascinating story. Before we continue, please kindly help subscribe to the channel. Like the video and comment where you are watching from and what time it's at your end. Now let's continue with our story. 3 days before the restaurant. Amara Okonkwo had learned early in her life that survival meant paying attention to what others overlooked. In Lagos, it meant noticing which streets flooded during rainy season, which market vendors watered down their palm oil, which neighbors smiled while counting your belongings. In Seoul, it meant different things. Learning which subway exits led to cheaper groceries, which convenience store managers didn't scrutinize her visa too carefully, which customers left the best tips, and which employers treated immigrant workers like furniture. She'd been working at Étoile Privée for 6 months, the kind of exclusive restaurant where a single meal cost more than her monthly rent. Night shifts paid better, and the tips from Korea's elite could cover her university tuition one careful smile at a time. Medical school wasn't cheap, even for Korean citizens. For a Nigerian student on a precarious visa, it was nearly impossible. But Amara hadn't come this far to quit, so she noticed things. The way Mrs. Seo Yura's business associate always touched her lower back when he thought no one was watching. How Yura's engagement ring came off the moment her fiancé's name appeared on her phone screen. The hushed conversations that stopped when Amara entered to refill water glasses. Staff were invisible by design. But invisibility, Amara had learned, gave you the best view in the room. 2 days before. Yura's voice had cut through the kitchen prep area, sharp and commanding. The African girl. Amara had straightened from sorting wine bottles, keeping her expression neutral. Yes, Mrs. Seo? I need something done, discreetly. Yura had glanced around. The head chef was outside smoking, the sommelier checking inventory in the cellar. Only Amara remained. Yura produced a small vial from her designer purse, the glass catching fluorescent light. Clear liquid, pharmaceutical-grade seal. My fiancé has health issues, heart palpitations. This is a supplement his doctor prescribed, but he's stubborn about taking medication. Her smile was practiced sympathy. During our dinner Thursday, add this to his wine. The first glass only. He won't taste it. Amara's stomach had dropped. Every instinct screamed wrong. Mrs. Seo, I'm not qualified to... You're qualified to pour wine, aren't you? Yura's tone hardened. Unless you'd prefer I mention to management how I saw you pocketing leftover bread last week? Amara hadn't been stealing. The head chef always let staff take day-old bread home. But the threat was clear. Undocumented accusations could end her employment, her visa status, her entire future. She'd taken the vial with trembling fingers. Good girl, Yura had said, like praising a well-trained dog. Remember, discreet. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. 1 day before, Amara had researched chemical poisoning between her morning classes and evening shift. Medical journals, toxicology databases. The list of clear, tasteless substances that could simulate heart attacks was terrifyingly long. She'd stared at the vial in her tiny dormitory room, lamplight making the liquid look innocent, harmless. But Amara knew better. She'd grown up in a place where looking away meant becoming complicit. where silence protected the powerful and buried the vulnerable. She thought of her mother's words before she'd boarded the plane to Seoul. "Fear is natural, my daughter, but don't let it make you small." The night everything changed. When Kang Jae-won had walked through those restaurant doors 40 minutes early, Amara's heart had nearly stopped. She'd watched him pause, watched recognition and rage flicker across his face as he spotted Yura with Min Seok, watched his hand move toward his hip, and she'd made a choice. Now, standing in his private office 3 hours after Yura's arrest, Amara faced the full weight of that choice. Jae-won sat behind a mahogany desk that looked like it cost more than her education. He hadn't changed from the restaurant, still in his tailored black coat, still radiating controlled danger. But his eyes were different now, calculating, assessing. "Tell me," he said quietly, "why I should believe you weren't part of this." Amara had expected this. "Because if I were, I would have let you drink it." "Maybe you got cold feet, changed your mind at the last second." "Then I wouldn't have kept the vial, wouldn't have evidence." Jae-won's fingers drummed once against the desk. "What did you overhear? Exactly." Amara recounted it all, every hushed conversation she'd caught while refilling water pitchers, every meaningful glance between Yura and Min Seok, every detail that had accumulated over weeks of being treated as furniture. "3 days ago," she continued, "I heard them talking in the private dining room. Min Seok said something about, 'Once the insurance transfers.' Yura laughed and said you'd made it easy by putting everything in joint accounts." Jae-won's expression didn't change, but something cold settled behind his eyes. "Min Seok isn't just her lover," Amara finished. "He kept mentioning our investors and the syndicate. This wasn't about passion, Mr. Kang. This was business." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Jae-won stood, moving to the window overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. "You understand what you've done? The world you've just stepped into?" "I stopped a murder," Amara said steadily. "That's all I intended." "Intention doesn't matter. You're a witness now. A liability to whoever Min Seok works for." He turned, backlit by city lights. "They'll come for you." Fear spiked cold through Amara's chest. But she lifted her chin. "Then what do you suggest?" Something almost like respect flickered across Jae-won's face. "You go back to work tomorrow. Act normal. Shaken by tonight, but not suspicious." He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. "You'll find a deposit in your account. Payment for information services. Anyone asks, you're helping with the police investigation, nothing more." "And actually?" "Actually," Jae-won said, "you're going to help me find out who wanted me dead badly enough to recruit my fiancé." He held her gaze. "Can you do that, Amara Okonkwo?" She thought of the vial in her pocket, the evidence that had saved a man's life. Thought of her mother's words about not becoming small. "Yes," she said. "I can." Jae-won nodded once, a silent pact, forged in poison and truth. "Then welcome," he said softly, "to the world that exists beneath the one you thought you knew." 4 years earlier. Kang Jae-won had met Seo Yura at his mother's funeral. She'd been standing apart from the crowd of black-suited mourners, colleagues, rivals, family members whose condolences tasted like obligation. Yura had worn simple gray, her presence elegant without demanding attention. When their eyes met across the memorial hall, she'd offered not sympathy, but understanding. "The hardest part," she'd said later when most guests had left, "isn't the loss itself. It's realizing you're now the last keeper of all her stories." Jae-won, exhausted from maintaining composure for hours, had found himself actually listening. Yura worked in art acquisition for international clients, cultured, educated, comfortable in both Korean and Western social circles. She didn't flinch when she learned what he really did for a living, didn't clutch her pearls or make excuses to leave. "Everyone builds empires differently," she'd said simply. "At least you're honest about yours." That honesty had felt like oxygen after years of coded language and careful positioning. Their courtship had been careful, measured. Yura never demanded more than he could give, never pushed into the darker corners of his business. She'd built a life alongside his, not dependent on it. Her career, her social calendar, her independence intact. When he'd proposed last spring, Jae-won had believed he'd found something rare. A partner who understood the weight of his world without trying to carry it herself. He'd been so catastrophically wrong. Present day, the morning after. Jae-won sat in his office reviewing security footage Amara had helped him access. 3 cameras covered étoiles privées private dining areas, discreet, expensive, installed at his request months ago when he'd begun hosting business meetings there. He'd never imagined he'd use them for this. On screen, Yura laughed at something Min-seok whispered, her hand lingering on his arm. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m., 13 minutes before Jae-won had arrived. "Rewind," he told Young-soo, who operated the equipment with practiced efficiency. To when they first arrived. The footage jumped backward. Yura and Min-seok entering together. Too familiar, too comfortable. Min-seok's hand on her lower back, possessive, assured. The way Yura leaned into him spoke of intimacy measured in months, not days. "Audio," Jae-won commanded, his voice flat. "Told you this was risky." Min-seok's voice came through, slightly distorted but clear enough. "Meeting here before he arrives." "He's always early, but never this early." Yura's tone was dismissive. "Besides, after tonight, it won't matter. Once the supplement takes effect..." "Supplement?" Min-seok laughed shortly. "Call it what it is." "Fine." "Once the poison takes effect," Yura corrected, irritation sharpening her words. "We move to phase 2. The syndicate's already positioned. Your people ready?" "The Gwangju connections are solid. Once you control his assets through the inheritance clause, we funnel everything through the shell corporations. Clean, untraceable." Min-seok paused. "And the African waitress?" "Disposable. Undocumented worker. No family in Korea. If she talks, we deport her before anyone listens." Jae-won's jaw clenched. Beside him, Young-soo's expression darkened. "Sir?" Young-soo said quietly. "Park Min-seok isn't just ambitious. We ran his background. He's connected to the Gwangju Syndicate, the same group that tried to move into your territory 2 years ago." "The shipping dispute," Jae-won said, memory clicking into place. He'd shut down their operations, cost them millions. They'd retreated, but never retaliated, until now. "This isn't about romance," Young-soo continued. "This is a hostile takeover disguised as a wedding." That afternoon, Amara returned to Étoile Privée for her shift as instructed, nerves singing beneath her professional composure. The manager had already briefed staff about the unfortunate incident. Mrs. SEO had been arrested for a misunderstanding that was being resolved legally. Translation: pretend nothing happened. But something had happened, and Amara was now the thread connecting a poisoning attempt to a criminal conspiracy she barely understood. "Table 7 needs water," the head server said, barely glancing at her. Amara picked up the crystal pitcher, grateful for something concrete to focus on. Table 7 sat in the semi-private alcove, the same one where she'd overheard Yura and Min-seok days ago. Today, 3 men occupied it. Korean, well-dressed, speaking in low tones that carried just far enough. She approached with practiced invisibility, filling glasses while keeping her ears open. Min-seok says the timeline's accelerated, one man said in Korean, assuming the foreign waitress wouldn't understand. Amara's 6 months of intensive language study ensured she caught every word. Accelerated how? Another asked. The Kang situation is contained but not resolved. We move regardless. The infrastructure's already in place. Shipping routes, distribution networks, political connections. With or without Kang's organization absorbed, we proceed. And the woman, the fiancée? Liability now. Min-seok's handling it. Amara's hand trembled slightly, water splashing the tablecloth. Careful, one man said in English, his tone dismissive. Sorry, sir, she murmured, cleaning the spill quickly before retreating. In the staff bathroom, she texted the number Jae-won had given her. Not just about you. Bigger operation. Infrastructure already exists. They're moving forward regardless. The response came within seconds. Names. I need names. Her shift became a covert intelligence operation, memorizing faces, catching fragments of conversation, photographing business cards left carelessly on tables. By closing time, Amara had compiled a dossier that would have impressed actual spies. Midnight. Jae-won's office. The Gwangju syndicate is older than we thought, Jae-won said, studying the information Amara had gathered. More connected. They've been positioning for this move for years. Amara stood across from him, exhaustion evident but posture straight. One of them mentioned political connections. What does that mean? It means, Jae-won said grimly, that killing me was never the end goal. It was the opening move. Young-soo entered carrying additional files. Sir, we've traced Min-seok's communications. He's been in contact with prosecutors, police officials, rival organizations. The poisoning would have looked natural, but the chaos afterward? He shook his head. They plan to dismantle your entire operation during the transition period. Frame it as internal collapse. While they absorb the pieces, Jae-won finished. Clean, efficient, and legal, Young-soo added darkly. Silence settled over them, heavy with implication. So what now? Amara asked. If they're moving forward anyway? Now, Jae-won interrupted, something dangerous crystallizing in his expression. We don't just defend, we dismantle them first. He looked at Amara, seeing not a waitress, but the asset she'd proven herself to be. Think you can handle more shifts at Étoile Privée? He asked. Because the poisoning was only step 1, and we need to know what step 2 looks like before they execute it. Amara thought of the men at table 7, their casual dismissal of her presence, their assumption that she was too foreign, too insignificant to matter. Yes, she said firmly, I can handle it. Jae-won nodded once, respect evident in his gaze. Then let's show them, he said softly. What happens when they underestimate the wrong people? 72 hours after the arrest. Jae-won's younger lieutenants wanted blood. Let me handle Min-seok, Tae-yang offered, leaning forward across the conference table with barely contained violence. 2 hours. He'll tell us everything, then disappear. The Gwangju connections are exposed, another added. Hit them now while they're scrambling. Burn it all down, a third agreed. Send a message. Jae-won sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. Around him, 8 men radiated the kind of controlled aggression that had built his organization. Loyal, efficient, deadly when necessary. But deadly wasn't always smart. No, he said simply. The room stilled. Sir? Tae-yang's confusion was evident. They tried to poison you. They're planning to dismantle everything you've built. We have names, locations. And if we move now, Jaewon interrupted, his voice quiet but absolute. We prove we're exactly what they've positioned us to be, violent criminals acting on instinct. He stood, moving to the window overlooking Seoul's morning traffic. The moment Min Seok or any Gwangju operative disappears, every prosecutor and police official in their pocket activates. We become the story. The investigation shifts from Yura's poisoning attempt to our retaliation. Understanding began dawning on faces around the table. They want us to react, Young-soo said slowly. They're counting on it. Exactly. Jaewon turned back to his team. We built this organization by being smarter, not louder. That doesn't change now. Then what? Tae-yang asked. We just wait? No, Jaewon said. We build a case so airtight that when we move, it's not revenge. It's justice. That afternoon, a private law office in Gangnam. Attorney Kim Sun-hee reviewed the documents Jaewon's team had compiled, her reading glasses perched on her nose, expression growing more intrigued by the page. You understand what you're asking? She said finally, looking up at Jaewon across her minimalist desk. Taking down a syndicate with legal infrastructure requires patience, months, possibly years. I have 3 weeks, Jaewon replied, before they execute whatever Phase 2 looks like. Sun-hee exhaled sharply. Then we don't build a prosecution case. We build a trap. She pulled out a legal pad, already strategizing. Financial forensics first. Every shell corporation, every wire transfer. If they've been positioning for years, there's a paper trail. We find it, freeze their assets, cut their funding before they can move. And Min-seok? Surveillance only. Let him think he's safe. Let him communicate freely with his Gwangju contacts. Sun-hee's smile was sharp. The more comfortable they get, the more evidence they provide. Jaewon nodded. I'll need immunity guarantees for my witness. The waitress? Sun-hee had already reviewed Amara's statement. Nigerian national, student visa. If she's testifying against a criminal conspiracy involving Korean citizens, we can secure protective status, possibly permanent residency. Do it. Evening. Étoile privée. Amara had learned to move through the restaurant like water, present but unremarkable, flowing around conversations without disturbing them. Tonight, Table 12 hosted Park Min-seok and 2 associates. They'd requested the private alcove, wine pairings, and absolute discretion. She provided all 3, plus the miniature recording device Jaewon's tech specialist had hidden in her uniform pocket that morning. Accelerating the timeline was necessary, Min-seok was saying, as Amara refreshed their water. Kang's more paranoid now. We move before he fortifies. The prosecutorial angle? One associate asked. Activated. We have 3 officials ready to launch investigations into his operations the moment we give the signal. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. Even if charges don't stick, the scrutiny alone will cripple him. And the woman? CO Yura? Min-seok's expression hardened. She's become a liability, too emotional, too exposed. After we secure the assets, she'll be retired from the operation. Amara's hand steadied the water pitcher through sheer force of will. Permanent retirement? The second associate clarified. Does it matter? Min-seok replied coldly. She served her purpose. Amara finished her service and retreated, the recording device feeling heavier than its actual weight. In the staff restroom, she texted Jaewon. Min-seok planning to eliminate Yura after securing assets. Timeline accelerating. 3 prosecutors ready to move on his signal. The response came quickly. Good work. Stay visible, stay safe. Team nearby. She hadn't noticed, but glancing through the restaurant's front windows now, Amara spotted the black sedan parked across the street. Young-soo in the driver's seat, watching. Midnight. Jae-won's office. 3 prosecutors, Attorney Kim repeated, listening to Amara's recording through professional-grade speakers. I know 2 of these names. Career officials, supposedly clean. Everyone has a price, Jae-won said quietly. Or leverage, Sun-hee corrected. Financial forensics might reveal what the Gwangju syndicate is holding over them. She made notes rapidly. This recording is admissible if we establish proper chain of custody. Miss Okonkwo, you'd need to testify about when and how you obtained it. Amara, exhausted from her shift but alert with adrenaline, nodded. I understand. You understand the risk? Sun-hee pressed. Testifying against organized crime means protective custody, relocation possibly. I understand, Amara repeated firmly. I'm not running. Jae-won studied her across the desk. This woman who'd stumbled into his world by accident but refused to stumble back out. Something had shifted between them over these intense days. Not romance, not yet, but recognition, respect. The beginning of trust forged in circumstances that left no room for pretense. The recording confirms Min Seok's timeline is accelerating, Young-soo said, redirecting focus. We need to move soon. Not yet, Jae-won decided. Let them get closer. Let them think they're winning. Sir? Tae-yang looked incredulous. You want them to launch their attack? I want them to commit fully, Jae-won clarified. Right now, we have conspiracy, attempted murder, financial irregularities. Serious, but potentially defensible with expensive lawyers and political connections. His expression hardened with controlled calculation. But if we let them execute Phase 2, if we document them actually moving against my organization, activating corrupt officials, attempting to seize assets, we have everything. Conspiracy becomes action. Theory becomes evidence. That's incredibly risky, Sun-hee warned. Yes, Jae-won agreed, but it's also certain. We don't stop them mid-swing. We let them swing, miss, and fall. Silence settled as everyone processed the strategy, brilliant and dangerous in equal measure. So we wait, Young-soo said finally. We watch, record, document everything. Until the moment they think they've won, Jae-won confirmed. Then we show them what losing actually looks like. He looked at Amara, who met his gaze steadily despite visible exhaustion. Can you hold on a little longer? He asked, not as a boss to an asset, but as one person to another who'd chosen to stand in the fire. Amara thought of Min Seok's casual dismissal of Yura's life, of the Gwangju syndicate's assumption that people like her, foreign, working class, invisible, didn't matter. I can hold, she said, as long as it takes. Jae-won nodded once, something like admiration flickering in his expression. Then let's give them enough rope, he said softly, to hang themselves. Christmas Eve, 6:47 p.m. Étoile privée glowed like something from a fairy tale. White roses cascaded from crystal vases. Candlelight reflected off polished silver. The string quartet positioned near the entrance played Vivaldi with practiced elegance. Outside, snow had begun to fall. The first real snow of December, as if the weather itself had been choreographed for the evening. Jae-won arrived precisely on time, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. His expression carried the perfect balance of anticipation and affection, a man excited to celebrate with his fiancée before their formal engagement announcement. No one watching would suspect he knew exactly what was coming. Mr. Kang? The maitre d' greeted him warmly. Miss Seo is already waiting in the private dining room. Of course she is, Jae-won replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She's always early for the important moments. The dining room had been transformed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline. A single table occupied the center, set for an intimate dinner. Expensive china, imported wine already breathing in decanters, a small box positioned beside Yura's plate that Jaewon recognized as the bracelet he'd given her last month. Theatrical touch, he thought distantly. Make it look like love. Yura stood as he entered, radiant in emerald silk that complemented her dark hair perfectly. Her smile was luminous, practiced, utterly convincing. You look beautiful, Jaewon said, kissing her cheek. The perfume she wore, Chanel, her favorite, smelled like betrayal now. And you look tired, she replied with apparent concern, touching his face gently. You've been working too hard. Tonight, just relax. Let me take care of everything. I'm in your hands, he said. If she caught the double meaning, her expression didn't show it. 7:15 p.m., the first course arrived, oysters on ice, delicate and fresh. Amara served them with steady hands, her uniform crisp, her expression professionally neutral. The recording device sat secure beneath her collar, state-of-the-art technology the size of a button, transmitting everything to Young-soo's surveillance van 3 blocks away. The wine, please, Yura said, gesturing to the decanter. Her tone was pleasant, but Amara caught the edge beneath it, anticipation disguised as normalcy. Of course, ma'am. Amara poured carefully, precise measurements, playing her role to perfection. When she reached for Jaewon's glass, Yura's hand shot out. Actually, Yura said, smiling apologetically, Mr. Kang prefers the Bordeaux for oysters. Could you bring the 09 vintage from the reserve cellar? Amara hesitated, exactly as she was supposed to. The reserve cellar requires manager approval. I've already arranged it. Yura interrupted smoothly. Just ask Jean-Pierre. He'll show you which bottle. Their eyes met for half a second. Amara saw the calculation there, the certainty that she was too insignificant to matter, too foreign to question instructions from someone like Seo Yura. Right away, Amara murmured, retreating. In the cellar, Jean-Pierre waited with a bottle already selected, placed conspicuously separate from the others. Mrs. Seo's special request, he said in French-accented Korean, handing it over without meeting Amara's eyes. For Mr. Kang only. Amara accepted the bottle, its weight familiar, but its contents unknowable. Outside the cellar, she passed the staff corridor where Young-soo's associate waited, dressed in maintenance coveralls. Their exchange took 3 seconds. The poisoned bottle handed over, an identical clean bottle handed back. Video documentation captured every moment. Amara returned to the dining room with steady composure. 7:34 p.m. Perfect timing, Yura said, as Amara presented the Bordeaux. This was the wine from our first date, remember? Jaewon smiled. How could I forget? To new beginnings, Yura toasted once Amara had poured. And to the future we're building together. To the future, Jaewon echoed, raising his glass. But he didn't drink. Not yet. Actually, he said, setting it down, before we toast, there's something I want to say. Yura's smile flickered. Of course. I've been thinking about trust, Jaewon continued, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. How it's the foundation of everything, business, relationships, life itself. Trust is everything, Yura agreed, though tension had entered her posture. Which is why, Jaewon said, I wanted tonight to be perfect. No distractions. No interruptions. He glanced toward the entrance where Park Min-seok had just appeared, right on schedule. Yura's composure cracked for half a second before reassembling. Min-seok? I didn't realize... I invited him, Jaewon lied smoothly. Since he's been such a close associate lately, I thought he should celebrate with us. Min-seok approached the table, his expression carefully neutral. But Amara, serving water now, caught the quick glance he exchanged with Yura. Confusion. Concern. This wasn't the script. Kang, Min Seok greeted him, extending a hand. This is unexpected. Life is full of surprises, Jae-won replied, shaking it firmly. Please, join us. There's more than enough wine. He gestured to Amara. Another glass for Mr. Park. Same vintage. Yura's fingers tightened around her napkin. Jae-won, I planned this as an intimate... And what's more intimate than including our closest friends? Jae-won interrupted gently. After all, Min Seok has been so invested in our future together. The statement landed with deliberate weight. Min Seok sat slowly, accepting the wine glass Amara poured from the clean decanter, not the poisoned bottle reserved for Jae-won. To trust, Jae-won said, raising his glass again, and to seeing people clearly. This time, everyone drank, except Jae-won. 7:52 p.m., dinner proceeded with surreal normalcy. Courses arrived, seared scallops, truffle risotto, perfectly cooked lamb. Conversation flowed about business, upcoming holidays, mutual acquaintances. But beneath the civility, tension coiled like a spring. Yura kept glancing at Jae-won's untouched wine glass. Min Seok's jaw remained tight. His responses clipped. Amara moved between courses, documentation continuing, aware of armed security positioned in the kitchen, the corridor, the street outside. You're not drinking, Yura observed finally, unable to maintain the pretense. Is something wrong with the wine? Nothing wrong, Jae-won assured her. I'm just savoring the moment. He lifted the glass, swirling the deep red liquid. This vintage is special after all. You went to considerable trouble selecting it. I did, Yura said carefully. Through Jean-Pierre, Jae-won continued, who received special instructions about which bottle to prepare. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Min Seok's hand moved subtly toward his jacket, where Jae-won knew he carried a weapon, but Young-soo materialized from the shadows near the entrance, his presence suddenly visible, deliberately menacing. I wouldn't, Young-soo said quietly. Yura stood abruptly, her chair scraping against polished floors. What is this? This, Jae-won replied, finally setting down the poisoned wine untouched, is the moment where we stop pretending. He gestured to Amara, who stepped forward, no longer invisible, no longer playing a role. Amara, Jae-won said calmly, would you please tell Miss Seo what you told me? About the vial she gave you? About the instructions to add it to my wine? The room crystallized into absolute silence. Yura's face drained of color. Min Seok half rose from his chair before Young-soo's hand on his shoulder pressed him back down. And Amara, meeting Yura's shocked gaze with steady defiance, spoke clearly into the recording device that would seal both their fates. Mrs. Seo gave me a vial containing poison and instructed me to add it to Mr. Kang's wine during tonight's dinner. The trap had sprung, and there was no escape. 7:58 p.m. You're lying, Yura said, but her voice lacked conviction. Her eyes darted between Amara, Jae-won, and the exits, calculating escape routes, searching for leverage that no longer existed. Am I? Jae-won stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calm. Then you won't mind if we test the wine. He gestured toward the entrance. A woman in a white lab coat entered, carrying a professional testing kit. Dr. Han from Seoul National University's Toxicology Department, contracted for the evening with full documentation. Wait! Min Seok rose sharply. You can't just... Can't what? Jae-won's voice remained perfectly level. Test wine at my own engagement dinner? Seems reasonable, given someone tried to poison me last week. That was a misunderstanding, Yura said quickly, desperately. The police already released you on bail pending investigation, Jae-won finished. Yes, I'm aware. I posted it. The admission stunned her into silence. Dr. Han approached the table, extracted a sample from Jae-won's glass using a sterile pipette, and added testing reagents. The solution turned deep purple within seconds. Antifreeze, Dr. Han announced clinically. Ethylene glycol, approximately 15 milliliters, enough to cause acute kidney failure within 24-48 hours. Death would likely occur within a week, symptoms mimicking natural cardiac arrest. Yura stumbled backward. No, I didn't. Jean-Pierre must have. Jean-Pierre is currently providing a statement to prosecutors, Young-soo said, stepping fully into the light. About the instructions you gave him, about the payment you transferred to his account last week. We have the vial you gave Amara, Jae-won continued, his tone almost conversational. Fingerprints intact. Chemical analysis matching this wine exactly. We have recordings of your conversations with Min-seok. Financial records showing wire transfers between shell corporations registered in your name and Gwangju Syndicate accounts. He pulled a small remote from his pocket, pressed a button. The dining room's decorative screen panels illuminated, transforming into projection surfaces. Immediately, video footage appeared. Yura and Min-seok at this very restaurant weeks ago, their conversation crystal clear. Once the insurance policy updates, $50 million, he trusts me. That's his weakness. Yura's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. Another video, Min-seok with Gwangju Associates. After we secure the assets, she'll be retired from the operation. Permanent retirement. A third projection showed financial documents, wire transfers, shell corporation registries, communication logs between Min-seok and 3 prosecutors whose names appeared highlighted in red. Turn it off, Yura whispered, her composure completely shattered. Please. Why? Jae-won asked. You wanted a performance. I'm simply providing one. Min-seok moved suddenly, bolting toward the service entrance. He made it 3 steps. Taeyang materialized from the kitchen corridor, blocking his path. 2 more of Jae-won's security team emerged from opposite sides. Min-seok found himself surrounded, trapped in a circle of men who'd spent years learning how to contain threats. I think, Jae-won said quietly, we're past the running stage. 8:07 p.m. The main entrance opened again. This time, prosecutors entered. Not the corrupted officials in Min-seok's pocket, but career prosecutor Choi Min-jung. Known for her incorruptibility and her perfect conviction record, she was flanked by 6 police officers, their presence official and absolute. Park Min-seok, Prosecutor Choi announced formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, corruption of public officials, and financial fraud. She turned to Yura. SEO Yura, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. This is entrapment, Min-seok snarled, finally finding his voice. You orchestrated this entire. We documented a crime in progress, Prosecutor Choi corrected coldly. Mr. Kang reported credible threats against his life. We observed, recorded, and intervened at the appropriate moment. Everything was conducted within legal parameters, reviewed by 3 independent judges. She nodded to her officers. Take them. Yura broke then, completely, irreparably. Jae-won, please, I'm sorry. I was scared. I was desperate. Min-seok manipulated me. You chose this, Jae-won said, his voice devoid of emotion. You chose money over trust. Ambition over integrity? You chose to poison the man who loved you. Loved? Yura caught the past tense, tears streaming now. You mean? I mean, Jae-won said. That whatever existed between us died the moment you handed that vial to Amara. Officers secured handcuffs around Yura's wrists. She didn't resist, her body sagging with the weight of consequences finally arriving. Min Seok, by contrast, fought, briefly, futilely, before being subdued and restrained. "The 3 prosecutors in your network," Prosecutor Choi said to Min Seok as he was led past, "are currently being arrested at their homes. The Gwangju Syndicate's financial operations are frozen. 17 shell corporations seized. Your entire network is collapsing as we speak." Min Seok's expression shifted from rage to horrified realization. "You didn't just catch us," he said, staring at Jaewon. "You dismantled everything." "Yes," Jaewon confirmed simply. "I did." 8:23 p.m. The dining room emptied slowly. Prisoners removed, evidence catalogued, statements recorded. The string quartet had stopped playing. The candles had burned low. The perfect fairy tale setting now looked like a crime scene, which is precisely what it was. Jaewon stood alone by the windows, watching snow fall over Seoul, his reflection ghostly against the glass. Footsteps approached quietly. "Sir?" Amara's voice, tentative. "Are you all right?" He didn't turn. "Define all right." "Still breathing. Still standing. Still in control." "Then yes," Jaewon said. "I'm all right." Silence stretched between them. Comfortable now. Familiar after days of intensity. "She really loved you, you know," Amara said softly. "At least at first. I saw photos in her office. The way she looked at you, that wasn't all pretend." "Maybe," Jaewon acknowledged. "But love without integrity is just performance, and I've had enough performances to last a lifetime." He finally turned, looking at Amara properly. This woman who'd saved his life by refusing to look away, who'd risked everything on the gamble that truth mattered more than safety. "You did well tonight," he said. "Better than most trained operatives." "I was terrified the entire time." "I know. You hit it perfectly." Amara smiled faintly. "My mother used to say, 'Fear is natural. Courage is what you do despite it.'" "Wise woman." "She was." Amara's expression shifted, grief flickering across her features. "She died 3 years ago. Illness. That's partially why I came to Korea. Fresh start, medical school, trying to save others the way I couldn't save her." Jaewon studied her face. The exhaustion, the determination, the unexpected strength. "You saved me," he said quietly. "That counts." "Does it balance out? One life for another?" "I don't know," Jaewon admitted, "but it's a start." Outside, police vehicles departed, their lights fading into snow-obscured distance. Seoul continued its endless rhythm, unaware that in one elegant restaurant, an empire had been defended and a conspiracy destroyed. "What happens now?" Amara asked. Jaewon considered the question. The legal battles ahead, the organizational restructuring required, the trust that needed rebuilding. "Now," he said finally, "we figure out what comes after survival." He extended his hand formally. "Thank you, Amara Okonkwo, for your courage, your integrity, your willingness to whisper truth when silence would have been easier." She shook his hand, her grip firm despite her exhaustion. "You're welcome, Kang Jae-won," she replied. "Though I expect you'll find ways to make this more complicated than a simple thank you." Despite everything, Jaewon smiled, genuine, unguarded. "Probably," he agreed. "I'm very good at complicated." 2:17 a.m., the restaurant had been empty for hours. Jaewon sat in the same chair where he'd planned to celebrate an engagement that never was, staring at the untouched wine glass still marked with evidence tags. The chandelier lights had been dimmed to emergency levels, casting long shadows across white tablecloths that now felt more like shrouds than celebration. His phone had buzzed 47 times. Lieutenants reporting successful arrests, attorneys confirming prosecution timelines, allies offering congratulations on surviving a sophisticated assassination attempt. He'd ignored them all. Victories were supposed to feel different, cleaner, less like standing in the wreckage of something that once resembled a future. The security team thinks you should go home. Jaewon didn't turn at Amara's voice. They're probably right. But you're still here. So are you. Amara moved around the table, sitting across from him, not beside him, respecting the space grief required. She'd changed from her uniform into street clothes, her shift technically over hours ago. I told them I'd make sure you left, she said quietly. Young-soo was worried you'd stay until morning, working through scenarios that already ended. Young-soo knows me too well. Silence settled between them, broken only by heating systems adjusting to Seoul's winter cold. Why did you do it? Jaewon asked finally, his voice rougher than intended. The truth this time. Not duty or conscience or because it was right. Amara considered the question carefully. My father was poisoned when I was 12. Business rival in Lagos. They made it look like a heart attack. Her fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. My mother suspected, but couldn't prove it. The man who did it attended the funeral, offered condolences, touched my shoulder like he cared. Jaewon looked at her then, really looked. I watched my mother carry that helplessness for years, Amara continued, knowing truth, but lacking evidence, seeing the killer walk free while we buried the consequences. She met his gaze steadily. When Yura handed me that vial, I saw my father's face, heard my mother's grief, and I thought, not again, not if I can stop it. So you weren't saving me, Jaewon said slowly. You were saving yourself from becoming your mother. Maybe, Amara admitted. Or maybe I was giving my 12-year-old self the ending she never got. The honesty cut deeper than any strategy session. I could have handled this differently, Jaewon said after a moment. Faster, more violently. My lieutenants wanted blood within hours. Why didn't you give it to them? Because, he exhaled sharply, the moment I built this organization, I promised myself I'd be smarter than the men who came before me. Smarter than my father, who died in a gang war over territory that didn't matter. Smarter than his enemies, who confused cruelty with strength. His jaw tightened. Yura expected the mafia boss, the violent reaction, the vengeful lover. If I'd given her that, she would have won. Not the case, but the narrative. I would have proven I'm exactly what people assume. Instead, you proved you're patient? Patient, Jaewon repeated, tasting the word. Or just tired of playing the role everyone expects. Amara stood, moving to the window where snow continued falling over Seoul's sleeping skyline. My visa expires in 4 months. After tonight, staying might be complicated. Prosecutor Choi is arranging protective status, Jaewon said immediately. Permanent residency pathway for witnesses in organized crime cases. Your testimony secured 17 arrests. Immigration won't be an issue. And after the trials, when I'm no longer useful? Jaewon rose, crossing to stand beside her. Their reflections merged in the glass. 2 people who'd started as strangers and become something harder to define. I'm offering you more than protection, he said quietly. I'm offering trust. Employment in my legitimate operations. Mentorship, if you want it. Safety that doesn't depend on testimony or legal proceedings. He paused. And friendship, if you can tolerate a complicated man with trust issues and a mafia reputation. Amara turned to face him, searching his expression for deception and finding only exhaustion and unexpected sincerity. "Why?" she asked simply. "Because you didn't look away," Jaewon replied. "In a world where most people choose comfort over courage, you chose to whisper truth to a dangerous stranger. That's rare, Amara. That's valuable." His voice softened. "That's worth protecting." She nodded slowly, something settling between them. Not romance, not obligation, but the beginning of genuine connection forged in poison and honesty. "Then I accept," she said. "All of it." Jaewon extended his hand again, sealing an alliance that had started with a warning and evolved into something neither could fully name yet. "Welcome," he said quietly, "to whatever comes next." Outside, Seoul prepared for dawn, unaware that in one snow-lit restaurant, two lives had shifted irrevocably. One learning to trust again, the other learning she was worth trusting. 6 weeks later. The courtroom felt smaller than its actual dimensions, packed with reporters, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and spectators drawn to Seoul's most sensational trial in years. Seo Yura sat rigid in defendant's clothing, her designer wardrobe replaced by institutional gray, her perfect composure finally, irreparably shattered. Judge Kim delivered the verdict with clinical precision. 22 years for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Yura's shoulders collapsed. No tears this time. Just acceptance of consequences that had been inevitable since the moment she'd handed Amara that vial. Park Min-seok received 35 years, his Gwangju syndicate connections adding racketeering and corruption charges that ensured he'd spend most of his remaining life behind bars. 17 co-conspirators faced similar fates. Prosecutors, Shell Corporation executives, corrupt officials who'd believed themselves untouchable. Jaewon watched from the back row, invisible among the crowd, his expression unreadable. Justice had been served, methodical and absolute. It felt nothing like victory. Meanwhile, across Seoul, Amara's new office overlooked Gangnam's business district, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a nameplate that read Operations Consultant in both Korean and English. Her official role involved analyzing Jaewon's legitimate import-export businesses, identifying inefficiencies, recommending structural improvements. Unofficially, she'd become what Attorney Kim called a moral compass with financial literacy. Someone who understood both ethical boundaries and practical realities. "The shipping contract from Singapore looks clean," she reported during their weekly meeting, sliding documents across Jaewon's desk. "But the Busan warehouse partnership has red flags. The owner has connections to organizations you've specifically avoided." Jaewon reviewed her notes, impressed as always by her thoroughness. "Recommendation? Terminate. Find alternative storage. Short-term inconvenience beats long-term compromise." "Agreed." He signed the termination order without hesitation. "What else?" "Your university scholarship program needs better vetting procedures. 3 applicants have family connections to rival organizations. Might be intelligence gathering disguised as education." Over 6 weeks, Amara had identified corruption Jaewon's own team had missed, prevented compromising partnerships, and helped restructure operations around a principle he'd articulated after Yura's arrest: sustainable legitimacy over quick profit. His empire was transforming. Slower revenue growth, but cleaner, more defensible, built on foundations that wouldn't crumble the moment someone applied pressure. "How's medical school?" Jaewon asked, closing the business files. Amara's expression brightened. "Exhausting, wonderful. The scholarship you arranged covered everything: tuition, books, housing stipend. I can actually focus on studying instead of juggling 3 jobs. You earned it. The testimony alone." "Don't." she interrupted gently. We've had this conversation. I didn't testify for rewards. I know. Jaewon smiled slightly. Doesn't mean you shouldn't accept them. 3 months after the trial. They'd fallen into rhythms that felt natural rather than forced. Tuesday lunches discussing business strategies. Friday evenings, when Amara's study schedule permitted, walking through Namsan Tower Park. Conversation flowing between professional updates and personal revelations. Jaewon learned about her childhood in Lagos, her mother's strength, her dream of opening a clinic serving immigrant communities. Amara learned about his father's violence, his mother's quiet dignity, the burden of building something legitimate from illegitimate foundations. Romance grew like winter thawing into spring, gradual, inevitable, rooted in mutual respect rather than dramatic passion. My lieutenants think I've gone soft, Jaewon admitted one evening, watching cherry blossoms beginning to bloom despite lingering cold. Have you? Amara asked. I prefer strategically evolved. He considered. But yes, probably. You've made it difficult to make decisions based purely on power dynamics. Good, she said firmly. Power without conscience is just tyranny with better marketing. He laughed, genuine, unguarded. You sound like Attorney Kim. She's been mentoring me. Says I have irritating moral clarity that makes me either terrible or brilliant at navigating gray areas. Brilliant, Jaewon said without hesitation. Definitely brilliant. Their hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining as they walked beneath emerging blossoms. 6 months later, Amara's clinic opened in Itaewon, small but efficient, offering affordable healthcare to Seoul's immigrant communities. The funding came from Jaewon's legitimate charitable foundation, every one documented and transparent. At the opening ceremony, surrounded by patients who'd found hope in her refusal to look away from their struggles, Amara caught Jaewon's eye across the crowded waiting room. He nodded once. Pride, respect, something deeper that neither had named yet, but both recognized. This partnership wasn't built on fear or obligation or dramatic rescues. It was constructed from daily choices. His decision to trust, her decision to stay, their mutual commitment to building something worth protecting. Ready? He asked later, offering his arm as they prepared to leave. Always, Amara replied, taking it. Outside, Seoul moved through evening routines, unaware that in one small clinic, 2 people had completed an unlikely transformation, from potential victim and unlikely savior to partners navigating complexity together. Not perfect, not simple, but undeniably, powerfully real. 2 years later. Étoile Privée had been renovated, new ownership, updated decor, a different atmosphere that acknowledged its past without being defined by it. The private dining room where poison had nearly ended a life now hosted legitimate business dinners, anniversary celebrations, moments of joy untainted by conspiracy. Jaewon stood at the familiar windows, watching evening settle over Seoul's transformed skyline. His reflection looked different now, older perhaps, but lighter. The weight of constant vigilance had eased into something more sustainable, awareness without paranoia, strength without cruelty. You're early again, Amara observed, entering behind him. She wore emerald silk, not unlike the dress Yura had chosen that fateful night, but the resemblance ended there. Everything else was entirely, authentically different. Old habits, Jaewon replied, turning to greet her properly. Though the reasons have changed. No assassins expected tonight? Not unless you've been keeping secrets. She smiled, crossing to him. My only secret is that I'm terrible at keeping secrets. You know this. 2 years had refined their partnership into something remarkable. Amara had completed her medical degree, her clinic now serving 3 locations across Seoul. Jaewon's organization had become legitimacy's blueprint. Former underworld connections transformed into ethical business networks, his reputation shifting from dangerous to reformed and formidable. The Korean business community had watched his transformation with skepticism that gradually became grudging respect. A mafia boss who'd chosen legal restructuring over violent empire building was rare enough to be noteworthy, practical enough to be credible. "The university called," Amara said, accepting the wine glass he offered. Clean, untampered, served by staff who'd been thoroughly vetted. "They want me to teach a course on medical ethics for immigrant healthcare providers." "You should do it." "That's what I said. You're supposed to worry about my schedule." "I worry about everything," Jaewon corrected. "But I've learned that trying to protect you from opportunities means protecting you from yourself. That never works." She laughed, the sound filling spaces that had once echoed with betrayal and fear. Their dinner reservation wasn't for another 20 minutes, but neither minded the early arrival. This restaurant had become theirs through reclamation, not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define their future. "Do you ever think about that night?" Amara asked quietly, looking toward the table where everything had changed. "Every day," Jaewon admitted. "Not the betrayal itself, but the moment you touched my sleeve. That split second when I had to choose between instinct and trust." "What made you choose trust?" "Your eyes," he said simply. "They held certainty, not fear. You weren't warning me because you were afraid of me. You were warning me because you believed I deserved to know the truth. That distinction mattered." Amara set down her glass, reaching for his hand. "And now?" "Now," Jaewon said, "I'm trying to build a life where that kind of trust isn't rare, where integrity isn't surprising, where early arrivals mean anticipation instead of survival tactics." "How's that working?" "Better than expected," he admitted. "Largely because you keep reminding me that strength and decency aren't mutually exclusive." The maitre d' approached discreetly. "Your table is ready, Mr. Kang." They moved toward the dining area together, not the private room with its ghosts, but the main hall where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city they'd both chosen to call home despite its complications. Jaewon pulled out Amara's chair, a gesture that had evolved from formality into affection. "To quiet voices," he toasted once they were settled, raising his glass toward hers. "To listening," Amara countered, meeting his toast with gentle certainty. Crystal chimed against crystal, clear, bright, uncomplicated by poison or pretense. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Inside, 2 people who'd begun as unlikely allies had become something stronger. Partners who'd learned that survival wasn't about avoiding danger, but about choosing trust when fear demanded otherwise. One early arrival, one whispered warning, one choice to listen when silencing would have been easier. And from those fragile elements, a future had been constructed. Not perfect, not simple, but undeniably worth protecting. Sometimes salvation arrives in unexpected forms. Sometimes courage looks like a waitress risking everything to whisper truth to a powerful stranger. Sometimes transformation begins not with dramatic gestures, but with the decision to believe that one quiet voice might matter more than a lifetime of loud betrayals. And sometimes, if you're fortunate enough, brave enough, and willing to listen carefully, survival becomes something greater than merely staying alive. It becomes learning to trust again. Thanks so much, my dear friends, for enjoying this beautiful story till this end. If you've not subscribed, kindly subscribe now to be notified when we drop our next story. Also, like the video and comment where you are watching from and what time it's at your end. Thank you.